Hi, everyone. My name is Nathan Merkel. Welcome to the Ivory Tower podcast, where we talk a little bit about sport and society, what sport looks like within the global context, what it looks like within the American context, what we think about sport, how we experience sport, why, how do we consume sport. I really hope you enjoy the following episode, and I hope you will continue to listen down the road. Thanks. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me for another episode of Rebuilding the Ivory Tower podcast. My name is Nathan Merkel. I'm really excited about this episode. I'm joined by a esteemed wheelchair basketball coach. His name is Ron Lykins. He has won 12 gold medals and 5 silver medals at the Paralympics. He currently coaches the University of Missouri's basketball team. I'm very happy and grateful to be welcomed by you, Ron. It's very nice to have you on.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. This sort of transitions us into the first question I have with you. I'd really love to sort of understand your personal experience with sport, where you grew up, and what your favorite teams, sort of how that your connection with sport began.
Grew up in south suburbs of Chicago, Dalton, Illinois. Played sports for as long as I could remember. My dad got me involved with baseball, basketball, kids in the neighborhood going playing the park, different things and that. So always was involved with sports and always enjoyed them. Being from Chicago, we had everything there. You know, we had the Bears for football, Blackhawks hockey, 2 baseball teams, Cubs, White Sox, and then you also had the Blackhawks for hockey. So all the major sports were there. My dad would take me to games. We would watch them when they were on television. Sports has always been a pretty big part of our family.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have any specifically favorite sport growing up or specific sport playing growing up?
Baseball and basketball.
Yeah.
My dad took me out in the backyard. He put a hoop up, so him and I would play a lot. He taught me basic parts of the game, got me excited to play basketball. Really enjoyed that, and then baseball was a love of mine too.
Yeah.
He coached our team, and he'd come home from work. First thing we did is play catch for a little bit before dinner. After dinner, we'd go to the park and he'd pitch to me and I'd hit. Then worked on catching pop-ups, fly balls, things, ground balls, things like that. Just taught me how to catch, how to throw, and started teaching me the game of baseball.
Yeah, that sounds great. Really interesting. You sort of have this really cool background with sport, and I'm curious, how did you use that background to then get into coaching wheelchair basketball? What was the sort of connection there?
Well, it started out. I needed some volunteer hours for class, like a field study, and I didn't have a car. I needed something close by, and we happened to have a wheelchair basketball team on campus. And a fellow student I was talking to about, I needed a place to do this field work. He said, "Well, check the wheelchair basketball team. They always need people there to help out." He gave me the professor's name and went there and visited with him, and he took me in. And I got my 90 hours. I really enjoyed it. It kind of gave me a direction on what I wanted to do. I was a community recreation major, but getting involved with the wheelchair basketball team kind of made me really want to get into adapted sports. And I finished my field work very quickly and continued to volunteer the rest of the year and then my senior year. So I just happened to be in the right spot at the right time. And this professor was the commissioner of the National Wheelchair Basketball Association. So the number one guy in the United States. I just kind of happened to walk into his office, and he took me in there and took a liking to me, mentored me, and got me started in my career.
Yeah, it's interesting. So back to your internship, you said you were required to just work with any sort of local sporting organization and volunteer hours. Did any sort of adaptive sport environment ever cross your mind, or was it just from the influence of, you said, your friend or someone else?
It came from that guy telling me about the opportunity to work on it at our university, and that back then I didn't know anything about adaptive sports, never seen it. I saw a little bit of the wheelchair basketball, didn't understand, just like, okay, a bunch of guys playing playing basketball who happened to be in chairs. It wasn't until I got involved that I learned more about it, how competitive it was, how organized it was, and then that there were other sports out there. It wasn't just basketball. So it's
Yeah.
a real eye opener for me to uh, almost like a PhD as an undergrad in learning about adaptive sports.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So when you first started that internship with wheelchair basketball, you said it opened your eyes. Did you then become more aware of different sports? Did you start to watch anything or sort of get involved with other adaptive sports programs, or were you just solely focused on wheelchair basketball?
We only had wheelchair basketball at where I went to school, University of Kentucky. And back then, there was no TV coverage. So unless there was a track meet somewhere, and I really didn't have an interest in track, I really liked basketball and wanted to stay with that. I started learning secondhand about different sports there. I learned what the Paralympics were and all that. And through my classes, I took a recreation for special populations class, which was part of my undergraduate requirement. That I learned about the different opportunities that are out there, both recreationally and then competitively athletic wise, what opportunities were there for individuals with disabilities.
Yeah, that's very interesting. When you first started that internship, did you initially think you were going to be a coach, or did you go in thinking you wanted to be a sort of athletic director?
Coaching was not on my mind when I went in. What I liked is we hosted a top level, top 16 teams in the country wheelchair basketball tournament, an invitational, and I got involved on the administrative side of how to put the event on, working with the teams, making sure all the things are there, and making sure the tournament ran smoothly. So I really was interested in the administrative side. Working with my prof, being the commissioner, I got to see how a sports league was run. I was like really into that, and that's the direction initially I thought I was going to go into. It wasn't until they started throwing me into practice, I'd hop in a chair and play, and that I started thinking, okay, maybe there's something else to it. And then I was an assistant coach my senior year, and I enjoyed that. And it wasn't until graduate school then I became a head coach, and that's when the coaching bug got me. I realized, I don't want to be off the sidelines. I kind of want to be in the game, and that was through coaching.
Yeah, that's great. That sort of transitions us to my next question. I'm curious if you could walk me through a sort of day in the life, what that looks like for coaching wheelchair basketball. Is that unique to your experience? I'm curious what that's like at the University of Missouri.
Well, it starts real early in the morning. I mean, our team starts practice at 5:30 a.m. Guys usually get in around 5:10 because I want them in their chair, strapped in, warmed up, broke a little bit of sweat, so that when 5:30 comes around, we're ready to start practice. Okay, we go for about 2 hours and 15 minutes, maybe 2.5 hours. So you're looking at about 7:45, 8 o'clock. Then, depending on what guys' class schedules is, they'll either come in and shoot 3 times a week. Some will come after practice, or some will come later in the day. They got to lift 3 times a week. Okay, so we have that. So that's the very gist of what we have going on. Then throughout the day, there's stuff I have to do. I'm a one-man show here, so I'm checking on the academic side. I'm handling all the administrative aspects of our program, whether it's fundraising, looking to do things for our travel, having buses, things along that line, hotels, planning our trips, planning our season, and then just preparing for our next practice and then what our next game is going to be.
Yeah. Do you enjoy the sort of structure that you're responsible for basically everything? Do you like that sort of environment? Or
I liked it better when I had an assistant coach who could help out. And I'm not too crazy the older I get about getting up so early, but I'm kind of into a routine here, and it works out really well.
Yeah.
The one thing I like is I know everything about my program. There's no surprises here. I know how my guys are doing academically. I know where we are budget-wise. I know what's happening with our promotions, everything to go with the program. It'd be nice to have somebody to help with it, but the nice thing about without having anybody there is I know what's going on. People come to me, so there's no surprises.
That's interesting. So I want to ask this question to sort of connect to other sports on campus. Do you think that when there's too many hands in the kitchen, per se, air quotes, that the head coach maybe sort of loses sight of what their athletes, who they are, or anything like that, anything of that nature? Or do you think the fact that you're heavily involved in every aspect of the athlete's sort of identity at school, does that enhance your relationship with the athlete? Or I'm curious if you had other interns or things like that, your experience would be different.
I think being kind of a jack of all trades,
Hmm.
it kind of hurts our student athletes. It's better to have somebody who can handle, who's an expert in strength and conditioning,
Hmm.
someone who's an expert in academic advising,
Hmm.
things along that line. I think having people who can do that and that's their focus, they can get more in depth. I think there's a higher quality of what can be done. Now, we do the best that we can here.
Hmm.
Uh, it adds to my day, which I don't mind, but the academic side is just as important as our
Hmm.
athletic side. I got to make sure that they're going to class, they're doing well, they're doing what they need to so they can pass, stay eligible to play,
Hmm.
and that. No, I do have someone through the university who's helping out with our strength and conditioning program. We
Cool.
had to contract that out, so that's kind of taken something off. But I'm still heavily involved with him to know where we are. Also involved with the athletes, asking, "Hey, does this work? What do you like? What ideas do you have?" But
Hmm.
somebody's actually in there running it for me, so
Yeah.
that helps.
I'm curious, you said whenever you scheduled practices, your practice starts at 5:30. Is that a philosophical reason for you? Like you want your athletes up early, or is there something else?
Yeah, I'd love that practice from 2:15 to about 4:45, but our facility here gets
Mhm.
busy as the day goes on. At that
Mhm.
time, we we have our two courts for practices.
Mhm.
Also, nobody has class at that time.
Yeah.
No, we tell our guys don't get an 8 a.m. class, don't get a class till at least 9 o'clock. All
Mhm.
right, so that you can hit practice. So it works out best for having everybody here.
Mhm.
Um, and that because you can't do a team sport with guys only coming twice a week,
Right.
or three times a week. We need
Yeah.
everybody there. So it just happens to work out that way. Um, if I had my druthers, so we'd have our own facility and we'd practice later on. If I could also then guarantee that my guys have, priority scheduling where they can
Mhm.
go in and get their classes done.
Yeah. That's interesting. Do you think does your schedule change during the off season or during the in season when your basketball season's in? Does that shift or?
No, right now we're still coming in. Well, we're coming in at 6 o'clock. We don't need to be in at 5:30. So a little bit later. We're not
Mhm.
going as much. We're now working on chair skills. Guys
Mhm.
are basically just coming in scrimmaging. All
Mhm.
right. They don't need me there. They need a break from me. It's a chance for them to just come play, keep kind of get that love of the game. Just come in and play and try some things there. When school ends, we're in finals week now. We'll start where we're working in groups of four, and then we'll
Mhm.
be working on chair skills, a little bit more structured for what we're going to do.
Mhm.
Part of it's going to be when do you have class? Now, if you're smart and you don't take a real like mid-morning class, we can come in at 8, 9 in the morning,
Mhm.
get it
Yeah.
done. Then you get your stuff in the afternoon. So
Yeah.
we'll vary off that. But during the school year, 5:30 to about 8 is our time. As we wind down during finals, both first semester, we'll kind of look at what the guys' final schedules are, schedule some light practices. We'll taper off during there. And as the year goes on, near the end, instead two and a half hours for practice, we might only go an hour and a half, maybe
Mhm.
an hour and 15, because
Yeah.
by then we're just, we want to stay sharp with what we're doing. I don't want to wear our guys out where we leave our game in the practice gym and we go to a tournament tired.
Yeah. Is there any sort of aspect of your job as a coach that you love seeing? Like this sort of question is like the pro versus con. Like, is there anything that stands out that you just absolutely love about being a coach and or maybe belonging to the University of Missouri? I'm just curious.
I love being at Mizzou. It's a great
Yeah.
school. Academically, it's an excellent school. We have great facilities here. We have good support. That's good. In terms of the coaching aspect, each year is like a lifetime. Okay, you have this team and you go from this year. The next year, players either graduate, um, or they're not. You have different players come in, so roles change. So it's like a puzzle. Each year, you're trying to piece this puzzle together to become the best version of yourself that you can be, and
Hmm.
it's finding out. hey, last year you couldn't do that. Now this year you're bigger, you're stronger, you're faster, you've improved. Now you take on more of a role. So it's helping with that individual development of the
Mhm.
player and as a person. And then how does that fit into a team structure for what our goals are as a team? So that's always kind of fun because it keeps things different. Each
Yeah.
year's different. It doesn't, yeah, we're still practicing at the same time, we're still doing all this, but the roles change. So the pieces change.
Yeah. That's interesting. Do you think your role as a coach has maybe changed or altered the way you see sport or sports as a whole?
Uh, it gave me an insight a little bit more what goes on at like for college athletes
Hmm.
and all that, and the time requirement and all the things that they have to do when you piece this all together,
Hmm.
how busy your players are and how much time they're devoting to their sport.
Hmm.
And you see like any other situation, you got guys who are super dedicated and want to put in the most. Others are there getting their degree, and they're good with that. They're probably done playing after college.
Hmm.
Others want to go on and play either on a club team. Some want to go professional. Some want to make a national team. So you kind
Hmm.
of taking all that together, but you can just see that we can still have the same goal, but the end goal individually for that person are going to be different.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's really interesting. I'm curious, the collegiate environment, have you, with the new implications of the NIL and how athletes are moving from one place to another, do you sort of, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this sort of, paying athletes and student versus athlete debate and all those sort of things. I'm curious what your thought is.
In wheelchair basketball, it really hasn't hit yet. I mean,
Hmm.
not many of us, we have some schools who can pay for scholarships and
Hmm.
schools completely paid for. I don't know if some are paying players to come in
Hmm.
and that. I mean, some kids might get a sponsorship from
Yeah.
a wheelchair company and
Hmm.
all that. That's still kind of like the beginning stages of it. So the
Yeah.
NIL really hasn't had an impact on us. When I look though at athletics, yeah, I think kids should be getting paid.
Yeah.
Don't have a problem with that. But NIL was supposed to be name, image, and licensing. All
Yeah.
right. So if you're going to put my picture on a poster, I should get paid something for that.
Hmm.
Not, hey, we're going to pay you X number of dollars to come to school here. What they've done is
Hmm.
they take the illegal things that used to happen under the table and now just made it legal to where you're
Yeah.
buying players and things like that. Um, and as a coach, that becomes difficult when you look at some schools like Indiana, Virginia, they lost every player they had on their team. Now
Hmm.
they got to start all over. The transfer portal, things like that, have really kind of changed the sport,
Hmm.
and it's kind of it's tough now to find programs that used to take 2, maybe 3 years to develop players. Players aren't sticking around that long. And,
Yeah.
and so that's made a big change on the sport. And that's why I think you see some of the coaches who are leaving because they can't adapt that. They don't believe in it.
Mhm.
But I don't think there's a coach out there who doesn't think these kids should be paid something. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it's
just kind of
interesting.
a little bit out of control now when you look at the payroll of some of these other schools
Hmm.
compared to, from one to the other. It's
Yeah.
amazing the amount of funds that go in there and the support.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm curious when we think of these massive, I think in the US, collegiate sport, just the environment of collegiate sport and how it's sort of boomed over the past, I would argue maybe 20, 30 years. The popularity is growing so much more heavily. Do you think the popularity, have you seen the popularity of wheelchair basketball grow maybe in your community or just in the collegiate, specifically the collegiate environment at all?
Oh, I think adaptive sports have grown tremendously since I've been involved
Hmm.
with it. Um, we get coverage in our school paper. Our
Hmm.
university takes pride in what we do. They'll announce the results of our competitions, where in the
Cool.
past that might not have happened. All
Hmm.
right, now we don't have the massive TV contracts where all our games are going to be on ESPN
Hmm.
or even locally, but we get our local news will report the scores of games and
Yeah.
that. When some of our players have been good enough to be named to a national team or they won some sort of award, that'll be on the news. All
Yeah.
right. And in the past, that didn't happen. So it's getting better and better
Hmm.
with what there is. The comparison, though, between adaptive athletics and able-bodied athletics
Yeah.
is not even close yet.
Yeah, dude. How large is the league that you're currently competing in? Remember you said 12 institutions, correct?
12 institutions that have a competitive wheelchair basketball program. There are
Hmm.
some universities that will have a wheelchair basketball program, but
Hmm.
they might not be eligible students who are quite who will play with us. Our guys have to follow NC2A guidelines in terms of eligibility. Some schools might not have that. They might have individuals from the community who play, or they'll have students who aren't full time. They're working towards getting there
Hmm.
in that. But also they might not have that population of resources, so they still offer it, whether it's through a degree program
Hmm.
or just a club sport or something along those lines. So
Yeah,
it's very small, but we got a new team coming in next year. University of Michigan is going to have a program, so
cool.
they're new. So we're starting to get pieces and more coming in there, and I think that's just the start that we're going to see a lot more coming in.
Yeah. Do you think these collegiate programs are only focused in the US? Have you heard any maybe rumblings about maybe programs in Canada or to maybe make it cross border? I'm just curious what you think.
No, I've in Great Britain they're starting to do something there.
Okay.
Um, Individual who's running that program contacted me, and
Hmm.
what they were looking for was like some of our kids who are looking to go to grad school,
Yeah.
go over there and play,
Okay.
and that. So they're starting to get that there now. Britain's a heck of a lot smaller, obviously, than the U.S., so they won't have
Hmm.
as many kids. But you got to start somewhere, and I think they might be the next one that's going to start getting
Hmm.
that program get
Yeah.
a competitive wheelchair basketball program
Yeah.
going at the
Interesting.
university.
And so out of those 12 programs, are all the schools that have the program in the same conference, correct? Or are you all
Yeah, we're
play each
part of the
other?
intercollegiate division of the
Okay.
National Wheelchair Basketball Association.
Yeah. And when does the season run?
Well, our program is basically year round. August,
Okay.
when they show up, it's preseason where you're doing conditioning
Yeah.
and small group work. October 1st is our first day of practice. So we
Okay.
have team practice then. That goes to about mid-March. Then the season ends. Then it's postseason work, summer
Hmm.
work, repeat.
Yeah.
So, we basically follow the same schedule as what able-bodied basketball does, same time
Yeah.
frame.
Is there a specific program or institution that you or the University of Missouri has a very distinct rivalry with?
There's always one with Illinois. I
Yeah.
mean, that's kind of the border clash
Yeah.
and all that. Um, Auburn's becoming one because a good friend of mine coaches there. It's a
Hmm.
friendly rivalry
Yeah.
with what we have there. So when you only play 8 or 9 schools a year,
Hmm.
eventually those rivalries just kind of develop. So it's basically
Yeah.
every college team you play against becomes a rival.
Yeah, that's interesting. And when you go into these environments, I'm curious, if you notice how many fans like show up and support. I'm curious what the environment is like and what it's like to coach in a collegiate atmosphere for the wheelchair basketball team.
We're not as hectic as what you're going to see on TV for able-bodied sports. There,
Hmm.
some schools will have a really good crowd there.
Hmm.
Others might be just family and friends.
Hmm.
One tournament they'll have a lot, the next one they don't.
Hmm.
It's not as the environment is. The teams play just as intense,
Yeah.
but you don't have the crowds getting into it like you'll see
Hmm.
at a Big Ten game
Hmm.
or at a um, SEC game.
Hmm.
The crowds aren't nearly as rowdy or as nasty or
Hmm.
as I into it as much. They're more supporting their team. It's a different type of approach, but there's support there,
Yeah.
and it's a good environment to go play in.
Yeah. Do you think the current structure of the collegiate environment where every team is in sort of one league, do you think it would make more sense to maybe separate it into two leagues, or do you think there will be in the future be other leagues? I'm curious what you think.
No, I think the college division will always be there. Now, if we grow, we might go into conferences where,
Hmm.
okay, you have an East Conference, South, Midwest, West.
Hmm.
Right now, it's just all 12 in one. But as we grow, you might see it become different conferences that way. But they're all going to stay within the intercollegiate division because we're all going to have to follow the same rules.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm really curious, sort of where you think the collegiate atmosphere or the collegiate environment of wheelchair basketball is heading towards? Do you see yourself? I forgot the stadium that Mizzou plays at. Do you think y'all play in the same arena?
No, we don't. We play our games in our student recreation complex, which
Okay.
used to be the old place where Mizzou used to play up
Hmm.
until about 1972.
Okay.
For us to play over at the arena, you got 18,000 people
Yeah.
there, and if you only have about 100, 200, it's not a good environment.
Yeah.
Here, it can be loud, a little
Hmm.
bit more atmosphere,
Yeah.
and that. Same thing when we go to Illinois, we play at the what's it called? I think the Arc now.
Yeah. Yep.
Used to be Impey Building, and
Hmm.
that. We were just there for nationals, so
Hmm.
we were at, to me, Assembly Hall, which is now State Farm Arena. We
Hmm.
played in there for nationals.
Yeah.
So if you had these big arenas, would be great to play in, but if you don't have many people in there, it's empty and
Yeah.
it's kind of hollow.
Yeah. So you actually prefer the sort of small, tight-knit environment because like you said, it sort of fuels that ongoing rivalry that you currently have with
That, and then
schools.
your intensity of the game, it's louder,
Yeah.
so you're more excited. You're going after it, and that. Just playing. Not to say when we're in empty arenas that the games aren't intense. The players are always intense there, but
Hmm.
just the atmosphere for the fans and that, I think, gets better when you're in a smaller place where it's loud.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's really interesting. Thank you very much for sharing all that. That transitions us into a nice sort of halftime break. We'll go ahead and take about maybe 5-10 seconds break, and we'll be back here in a little bit. Okay, everyone, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the first half of the episode. Today, I'm really excited about our conversation. We talked a lot about sort of Coach Lykins, your history with sport, how you kind of got into coaching wheelchair basketball, how you sort of landed at the University of Missouri, sort of the environment of the collegiate atmosphere of things and what that looks like, and maybe how it's altered the way you view sport and things of that nature. And I'd love to sort of transition from your personal experience at collegiate in the collegiate environment to the national environment and understanding your perception and your experience with Paralympic sport. I'm curious if you could sort of walk us through some of your experiences of coaching Paralympics and how you felt doing those and what the current state is maybe of the sport and what your thoughts and opinions are on that.
All right. First of all, there's to me, there's no greater experience than representing your country in sport.
Hmm.
I've been fortunate enough to be a head coach 5 times, an assistant coach once. I'm currently assistant coach for the U23 team and
Hmm.
also for the men's senior team. And there's nothing better than that. It's the best of the best, and going to represent your country. And I never get tired of it. It's just a phenomenal experience in that. Where it's gone from when I first started to where it is now, night and day difference, and
Hmm.
in a positive way, in terms of support, in terms of coverage, in terms of people coming to games, and in terms of the quality of players and
Hmm.
competition. It is so much better than when I first got started, which is good because it's shown that the growth of the sport, the
Hmm.
popularity of it, and the competitiveness is getting better and better. And and that's how it should be. If not, you don't want to be a flat line in terms of your sport. You always want to be moving upward, pushing the
Yeah.
envelope, getting better and better, getting bigger and bigger. And adaptive sports in the United States and across the world is increasing by the year.
Yeah. It's very awesome to hear. And I've got a stat pulled up for the closing ceremonies of the Paralympics in 2020 in Tokyo. They had 139 million viewers tune in for the closing ceremony in Tokyo. And then in Paris of 2024, the closing ceremony for the Paralympics had 194 million, which is a 40% increase over those just 4 years, which is,
Well, 3 years because
yeah, basically because
Tokyo
of
was
COVID.
2021.
Yeah, because of COVID, which is wild. And that's sort of basically 10% each year of rising popularity. curious, like why you think this occurred. Do you think it's because of maybe more access to adaptive sport, or do you think there's anything else there that sort of increased awareness?
I think it's a couple of things. One, there's more and more athletes with disabilities competing, whether it's on the junior level, the college level. You have basketball, and you're starting to get track and field, you're starting to get tennis. So there's more and more out there. People are starting to see it more. And that sponsorship has gotten greater. Okay, and now you're seeing it on TV, and people they like what they see. They're seeing it not as a disability sport, but they see it as a sport played by persons with disabilities. So it's basketball. Watching wheelchair basketball games, basically basketball without the verticality that's in there. And that you look at some things. A big deal I think that's really helped is when the USOC, United States Olympic Committee, became the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. So when we're out at the training center, it's both Olympic athletes, Paralympic athletes. I think it was Rio when they started showing commercials. When Toyota was a sponsor, they had the Olympic rings on there and they had the Paralympic agitos. Same commercial, same thing. Before Tokyo, you start seeing ads with Olympians and Paralympians in the same ad, or you would just see Paralympians in an ad promoting a product. That wasn't there years ago, so it's becoming more and more out there where people see it and they're starting to get an idea of it. And now you got these sponsors coming in, and the TV coverage and the media coverage is so much greater than what it was.
Yeah.
When I coached a team in 2004. Year end, Paralympics, I don't think were broadcast at all. I remember it was New Year's Day or New Year's Eve day at 2:00. CBS ran a 2-hour special on the Paralympics, the highlights from Athens. Here it is, 5 months afterwards, you get 2 hours on New Year's Eve day when nobody's watching TV, and that's all it was. To now, you have live coverage. You have tape delay coverage. You can watch it streaming. You can watch on NBC, NBC Sports. I mean, it's gone from nothing to being broadcast there. And I think you have the numbers that talked about how much TV coverage was there. So the more TV coverage you get, more and more people learn about it. Kids learn that, hey, I might be able to do that. So they start to get involved. Now you get more and more people with it. And that's how the sport's growing. And it's skyrocketing from where it used to be. It's way better than it used to be, and it's going to continue to get better as we go along because people are realizing these are some tremendous athletes that are competing, and they see it as a sport, and it's not a human interest story, it's not a sympathy story. It's you got athletes competing just like any other athlete.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. Another stat to throw out is that in Tokyo of 2020, there was a 35% increase from 2020 to 2024 in the amount of digital channels. Saw was over 305 million views over a video platform. 305 million views, which is a 35% increase from 2020. So it's basically the same sort of 10% by year. Each year saw 10%. So it's really interesting. Maybe in 2028 we'll see a further 10% each for those four, maybe it'd be another 40%. So
I would think it's going to be higher because what's going to happen now is the games are going to be held in the US.
Yeah.
Right. So you're going to have that hometown pride coming in where people want to watch. There's going to be the publicity leading up to the games. I think the opportunities of growth are going to be tremendous. And that you look at what happened in France with how they embraced, the French public embraced the Paralympics and how their venues were full and people just going nuts when the French team was playing whatever sport there is. We're hoping, and I think what we're going to see is that's going to happen for U.S. teams in L.A. or U.S. athletes in L.A. It's going to be more than just parents and friends attending. You're going to have people coming here to watch. These last few games, the venues are selling out. So you have full venues there, full of spectators there. More and more people are seeing it. It's becoming harder and harder to get a ticket.
Yeah,
and so the need is there, the desire by the public's there, the want. and it's just going to keep increasing. And I'm so excited to see what's going to happen with these games being on our home soil.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen? We were fortunate when we were in Brazil, we're basically the same time zone.
Mm-hmm.
Tokyo, I mean, that's halfway around the world.
Yeah.
Our games are at 9, and I can't remember what time they were back here.
Mm-hmm.
Very dedicated fans had to watch that. Same thing from Paris, that time zone difference. Now, what we're going to look at is, you don't have to be up at 3 in the morning to watch something live. You're going to be able to watch it during prime time, and to see what those numbers are and what viewership's going to be. It's real exciting to see where it's going to go from there.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your experience of coaching these sort of medal-winning games and receiving these medals. Could you go like sort of paint us a picture of sort of what that experience was like, sort of coaching in these very high stakes, very national environments? I'm curious if you could sort of bring us into what that felt like.
As a coach, my players, they're the ones who won the games.
Mm-hmm.
My job was basically not to screw it up. It was to prepare them so they were able to go play.
Mm-hmm.
And I was fortunate to have really good women
Mm-hmm.
and then real good guys to play there. But we tried to treat it as another game and that, so we didn't get too caught up in what was going on. We just wanted to go play a basketball game.
Mm-hmm.
And when that game's over with, and you've taken that last step. First of all, you want to get to the medal round. Then you're in the medal round, you want a medal. Then you want to change the color. Each is an accomplishment, but you want to take that step, go a little bit further, get a little bit higher, and then you reach the top there. So you hear your anthem, see your flag raised a little bit higher. It's the best feeling there is. Now, as a coach, I felt everything once the game ended. I was super happy for myself, for my staff, for my players, because I know how much work they put into it. I was relieved that we got through this situation with no injuries, chairs didn't break. We were able to play. We were able to achieve our goal. I would be sad because the journey was over with. It's a 4-year process, at least 4 years with this team, each quad. There's a lot of time you spend with these guys, with these players. You develop relationships with them. To me, training camps were always my favorite thing because I could see the growth of our players as a team and how we got better. Something didn't work, we could stop, we could teach, we got better. Competition was, hey, we're being judged on what we're doing. It's almost like we have to go compete. And then once you're at the games, it's like, as soon as you win a game, check it off. As a coach, not a lot of time to enjoy it. Maybe on the bus ride back to the village, and you're starting to plan the next day, practice, film, preparing for that next opponent. So that's kind of hard. But then once it's all over with, you realize how happy you are, how relieved, how sad, how tired you are. But it's the best feeling to be able to take it to that very top and to be atop of the podium. And I've been fortunate enough to have 4 teams that have taken me there, and I'm forever indebted to those players that formed those teams and were successful in our journey.
Yeah, it sounds like a phenomenal experience to just first-handedly consume yourself. That sounds great. I'm curious if you could sort of walk me through what a day in the life might look like. Maybe like one day, maybe a game of like what like is the same schedule. You shared here at the University of Missouri. You practice at 5:30 in the morning. What was the sort of schedule like? What was it the same that you're seeing in the collegiate environment, or is it totally different?
Sort of. There you only get to practice hour and a half because so many teams there. So we would get up, depend on when we played, would depend where our practice was. So we would get up, either watch film or get ready to go to practice, come back. We would meet as a team, kind of game plan what we're going to do, head to the venue, play the game, come back home, depending on what day. If it was early enough in the day, we'd watch film that night. Then as a coach, then we would get together, evaluate what we got to do the next day, set it up again. You really don't know what day it is. It's day 1, day 2, day 3. Then it becomes, oh, hey, today's Canada, tomorrow's Germany, tomorrow's so-and-so. All right, semifinals, and it's just kind of checking a box along. It doesn't, there's no such thing as Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's next day. All right, let's go with it.
That's interesting. That's really cool. That's a really cool environment. I'd love to sort of shift from the international to now the national state of where maybe adaptive sport is in the U.S. And I've actually got an article pulled up that's by a couple of Brazilian-based academics, and it's titled "School Physical Education and Disabled Students: What About Paralympic Sports?" And what they're looking at is how the curriculum of physical education is laid out in the U.S. And I know we spoke before we started recording about how some schools are actually getting rid of their PE programming. And this article looks at is how to integrate adaptive sports into PE curriculum. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on maybe, the industry is getting rid of PE curriculum, and how do we sort of include or adapt or include a bunch of different styles of sport into one sort of PE curriculum?
Uh, part of it's going to be the education of your teachers, and it's the philosophy of your school districts and that whether you have PE. And if you do, I think, some schools have adapted PE teachers, others don't. And it's kind of like, all right, when I was in school, PE was the best part of the day. That's what we looked forward to.
Yeah.
That's why we learned how to play sports. We learned skills such as running, jumping, worked on things like that. That then when we can either go out and play with our friends afterward or build towards playing on a team, things like that. I always thought kids with disabilities kind of got the short end of it because they didn't get that. Either they got excused from PE and went to a study hall, or they would be in PE class and they'd be the obstacle that somebody dribbled around. They didn't really get to participate. And the best schools, I had a chance to be around in some in Atlanta, and that they took some of the concepts like for basketball. While they were teaching basketball to able-bodied kids, they taught wheelchair basketball to kids with disabilities. All right. Now they couldn't play in a game and that, but they could still teach the individual fundamentals. They could teach how to pass, how to dribble, how to shoot, and then grade them based on what they did, how well they did there. So they're still learning the game, a little bit the individual fundamentals and that, but then also your kids in the class learn that, hey, this kid, even though he's in a wheelchair, he's still playing sport. So it's an educational thing for your able-bodied students to see, all right, this kid in a wheelchair is just not sitting there. He's capable of playing sport like I am. Might look a little bit different, but it's still the same sport.
Yeah.
So it was so important for these kids to get that opportunity to work on their skills to help them when they go play on their community teams.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I'd love to transition to. I'd love to quote this article by the two Brazilian academics that actually states Paralympic sports have been employed as a tool to underscore the limitations and inherent incapacity associated, while emphasizing the notion of overcoming the limitations through sport, which is basically saying that they're framing Paralympic sports as this sort of heroic thing, like, oh, it's so brave of you, so bold of you to do this, instead of it just being this sort of, like you're saying, that they're just humans doing sport, competing the same way we do. And it goes on to say, additionally, it is crucial to note that when you frame Paralympic sports as a means to simulate a sort of experience, it then segregates those experiences and makes it more unacknowledged being just part of a human experience. And so what they're trying to argue is what you're saying is like, maybe you shouldn't always view this in sort of, oh, that's different. This, maybe they're a hero, or there's, overcoming all these challenges. It's so brave of you. But at the end of the day, they're humans just like you and I, and they compete just as hard, if not harder than you and I. And it's really interesting to see. I know a couple of, it's very common in the US, and I'm sure maybe even abroad, with disability in academia, where I know in our program, we actually have a class called Disability in Sport, where some of the students will actually be placed in some sort of adaptive environment, maybe a wheelchair, crutches, anything of that nature. And they'll be required to, go throughout their daily life for maybe 48 hours or a week, and then document everything that may be different. And I'm curious, do you think this sort of approach should be used maybe at a younger age to sort of, adapt individuals more, maybe high school age, maybe start doing these things? I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I think the sooner you do it, the better, before kids start developing a a mindset or come up with a preconceived notion of what it means. What those situations do is you get to experience, and through experience you learn, and you come up with some empathy to realize what it's like. And then the more you do it, you realize, hey, this is still basketball. It's just, I'll use that as an example. It's just played a little bit differently. The hoop's the same size ball, same size court, all that stuff. But when you get to experience it, I think you learn more than when you read about it. And it kind of normalizes what's happening there, and that's good not only for the individual but just for society in general. Now people are going to be more accepting of it, and now like, oh, hey, wheelchair basketball, you can play that here. Oh, wow, college, you have it. Hey, you got the Paralympic Games. You realize how big it is, and now people start, and that's what helps grow the sport.
Yeah.
And it just the sooner I think you get introduce people to it, the sooner they realize, you know what? Yeah, this kid, yeah, he's overcome this, but he's just like I am. Right? He likes to play basketball, or he likes to play tennis or swim, or he likes to compete.
Yeah.
So do I.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting to sort of understand that dynamic. And I feel like, generally speaking, maybe this is just my opinion, but I feel like a lot of individuals will perceive the Paralympics or just Paralympic athletes as these sort of, maybe just further than their disability, just individuals overcoming these crazy challenges and things like that. And yes, I am 100% aware that they do, but they're also, like you're stating, they're humans like us. They compete just like us. They're just as competitive, if not more. You've had firsthand experience seeing that, winning all these medals, and I'm sure your athletes are more highly skilled than I am in basketball, and like I'm sure they could beat me at any day of the week. So
yeah, and that's the thing. Okay, all those things you said are true, but at the end of the day, you're looking at it like, holy cow, these guys are some of the best athletes I've ever seen. This guy's shooting 3-pointers, and he shoots them better than I can. It takes the focus off all these poor little guys or poor people in wheelchairs who are, just out here, and how brave they are, to how competitive they are. Get knocked down, hopping up, the skills that they possess, dribbling, passing, shooting, defending, how fast they can push, how quickly they can turn their chair, the maneuverability. You realize that it's a skill set, just like any other athlete, but they're doing it with a piece of equipment. The wheelchair is a piece of equipment. So just like in biking, that's a piece of equipment. You got to, you're pedaling, but you got to learn how to draft and things like that. The strategies go in there. Same thing with the chair. These guys are just as skilled, if not more skilled, than anybody else, and that's what they want to be viewed as, skilled elite athletes. And the more people see that, and the more they get like a chance to try, they realize that, and that's kind of normalizing then what the experience is.
Yeah, I hope this conversation will help individuals sort of shift that mindset, or shift that perception, or that maybe that bias they have towards adaptive sport. And I'm curious to sort of lead us into our final discussion point of what you think the future of Paralympic sport or adaptive sport is going to look like, maybe in the US specific, or maybe just globally. What do you think, where do you think it's going to go? Do you think it's going to be, just as popular or even more popular as the Olympics? Do you think the collegiate league will be larger? I'm curious what your thoughts are.
It's going to grow. I think all the years and years of history that's been involved with adaptive sports, wheelchair basketball, and that, starting to bear some of the fruit. TV viewership, sponsorships, athletes now being recognized by the USOPC and being a part of that. I just think it's going to continue to grow. These games in LA, I think, we talked a little bit about the growth from when I first started, from that 2-hour show to all these live coverages is going to continue. And it's going to be really big in LA. And then once that happens, I think that's going to continue to grow from there, because people are going to become educated with it, and they're going to realize that, hey, this is really quality sport being done here. I want to continue to watch it. So I think the boom we're going to see here is going to be tremendous in these next 4 years leading up to LA and then afterwards. So if that's going to happen, then I think you're going to see it continue to grow on the international scene. Other countries are growing just as fast as we are, maybe even a little bit faster in some instances. All right. So the sport's only going to get bigger. Will it beat the Olympics? That I don't know about. All right, that's going to be a tough one to cover, but it could be just as relevant. And I think it is already, but more and more people are going to see it that way.
Yeah.
So the viewership might not be as high, but you're going to see it's just going to continue to grow there.
Yeah.
So to me, then the more viewership there is, the more people become educated about it, more programs are going to come, more opportunities, greater athletes are going to be developed of it. All the sports are continue to grow and improve and get better and better.
Yeah.
And it's just going to lead to a very positive growth.
Yeah, I agree. I think it will too. And I'm curious what you think. Maybe do you think there will be maybe a larger influx of maybe professional club organizations here in the U.S.? Because I know maybe is there a league that exists after college? I'm curious what you think. Maybe there'll be a larger platform available for athletes when they graduate. I'm curious what you think.
In the States, we have the adult division, National Wheelchair Basketball Association. Both you have one for division for women and division for men. Our top athletes go overseas and play professionally where they'll get paid. Now they're not making the same kind of money that you're going to see NBA. They're making enough where they can make a little bit of money, pocket it, but enough to where they can survive and they can get a chance to be a professional athlete playing overseas in Europe. I don't know if that's going to come to the States because, we're so driven by the almighty dollar. If people can find a way to make money off wheelchair basketball, there will become a wheelchair basketball league. Yeah. Until then, I don't know if we'll get that here, but overseas, they sure seem to have it. And you got some excellent leagues in Spain, Germany, France has a league, Italy. That's the place to go. Guys, when they're done with college, the ones who are serious about making a national team or want to continue to see how good they can get, head overseas and play professionally.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'd love to, hopefully over the next maybe 5, 10, 15 years, we'll start to see this sort of influx of teams or cities, backing their local organizations and creating this sort of environment. And I know the collegiate environment now has 12 organizations. Maybe that'll continue to grow and it'll be a little bit more national than it is maybe regional right now. And so I'd love to see that, hopefully some more growth. And through the growth that we're seeing over the 2021 Olympics to the 2024, the 10% basically per year, maybe if that continues, hopefully next 10 years, it would be, a massive boom and massive growth to where there's this massive audience and large interest within this sort of adaptive sports environment. And I feel like that'd be really cool to see.
Right. And more people get involved, then there's going to be more and more of a need. So more and more universities are going to have to get involved and help out with. Those 12 teams are just 12 that meet intercollegiate division guidelines. There's other universities out there that have adapted sports. They might not compete in basketball or they play within the NWBA, but not at the collegiate level. So there's more than just the 12, but there's just 12 that are part of our division. Hopefully those numbers will increase with that. And I think LA is going to play a big part, hopefully, with that.
Yeah, I think it will too. And that sort of concludes our episode today. I wanted to thank you again, Mr. Lykins, for joining me today. I really appreciated the conversation. Hope everyone out there enjoyed the conversation on adaptive sports in the U.S. and what that sort of looks like. Hope everyone enjoyed the show and hope everyone continues to join in the future. So thank you again, Mr. Lykins, for the time and the availability. I learned a lot from you today. It was a wonderful conversation.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity. Anytime I get a chance to talk about adaptive sports and that I like it, and I hope some people learn some things here and will, again, help that movement of that what we're trying to see. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Not a problem. Thank you so much and hope everyone enjoys their day. Thank you very much.